I'm pleased to see you're still with me. We are now on chapter 4 of a Correggio story. If you haven't watched 1, 2 or 3, please do. It makes so much more sense, the stages we have explained this story, if you watch them in order and in the correct sequence, and it will give the greatest ammunition and understanding to intake this information now in chapter 4. So as we have shown in the previous chapters 2 and 3, how prolific Correggio's mythological works were used in the influences of great master paintings, this way of uncoding works and method that these artists conducted themselves did not stop. And as we go through the timeline of history now into the 18th century, when my painting and the other Correggio works were part of the Orléans collection, where the demise of many famous works happened, and you'll learn a lot about now in this chapter, we include famous artists of the 18th century, such as Antoine Coypel, Charles Antoine Coypel, two French artists, court painters to the Duke of Orléans, and William Hogarth, an English painter, the most famous English painter that we have, a genius. These great artists that are well aware of Correggio works did the same system as Rembrandt did and the other artists we've mentioned, but they continued that method, but continued telling the story. So the tragic event that unfolded in the Orléans collection of the mutilations was documented within works. Let's dive in and get started. Antoine Coypel, born in 1661, died in 1722, a French painter, pastelist, an engraver, a decorative designer and draftsman. He studied under his father, Noel Coypel. He studied the works of the Italian Renaissance and the Baroque, and in particular, Raphael, the Carracci, Titian, Veronese, and most specifically, Correggio. Now, I discovered a work by Antoine Coypel that blew my socks off. It's an engraving of a lost painting. Now, this engraving I'd never seen before, and it's not easily accessible online. You have to really delve deep to find it. So this engraving is known as Anacron saving Cupid from the fire. Now, we can see we have a Cupid in the centre of the picture being held back from the fire, but then on the table, the leg is a satyr's leg. And then at the bottom of the satyr's leg, we see this little dog asleep. Now, I recognise that dog's face as the lion's face on the bottom right of the William van Heck image. And then to the left of Cupid, there is the Venus with her hand above her head. She is part of the fireplace. And above her we have a character at the top that may possibly be a representation of the satire. And we can see the satire's leg as the nod and the identification. Above we've got the drapery and the sheets. Where is the forked tree? Wait a minute. The forked tree is on the fire because Cupid was saved from the fire, because Venus was cut up, removed from the painting and the satire and burnt on the fire. What we can see here is a storytelling of an event. So within Coypel's works, he has other works that depict influence of the Venus satire Cupid painting. So we have this engraving of Venus with a satire peeping. The Venus is very much after Correggio's Venus satire Cupid, just like mine. We can see it here. And then we have this very fascinating little drawing, which is very important to me. It's known as the Squire Trulaby, but what you have is a fireplace to the right, two gentlemen holding this guy, but I can see here that centre figure is after Correggio's leader. The two guys either side of him are figures within the leader painting. But to the left, we have someone by the door. This person is after a painting that went missing at the same time as my painting went missing. And I can see through inventories and archives that Leonardo's Leader and the Swan was part of the collection prior to the Orleans collection, and this painting was sold to the Orleans collection, but then never made the 1727 inventory, the same as mine didn't, because they vanished. But here we can see a nod to Coypel understanding this work and having good awareness of it. So this person here by the doorway represents Leonardo da Vinci's leader figure. Then above, in that little sort of embellishment above the doorway, we see a leader and the swan additionally. And I believe this is after another great work, possibly by Giulio Romano. You have three leader works in this picture. So Coypel shows his great awareness of a Leonardo's leader, a Correggio leader, and another leader painting here as above, which I believe was part of the Orleans collection. There's various engravings like this one here, which shows a four-person composition, and you can see the guy on the bottom right has a very similar position to Cupid, and we have a Venus there with a robe. Second on the right is a man holding a blanket over a Venus. He could be classed as the satire. And the man on the left, he's got a lion's head, like a rug on his head. It's the four characters. We've got the lion's rug, we've got the Venus, we've got the satire, and we've got the Cupid. And we could say that this painting, part of the Orleans collection, was greatly influenced by them four characters in the Correggio work. This work, Jeu d'Enfants, was created by Charles Antoine Coypel, and he was the son of Antoine Coypel, also director of the Académie Royale. And here we can see that this scene of infants includes the two famous works, which is the Leader and the Swan and the Venus satire Cupid. And on side by side, we can see here this figure is leaning across just like the satire over the Venus. So below we have the Venus there. Below to the right, on a side profile with legs in same position, we have a little Cupid. And this other figure here, in between the Cupid and the Venus, I allocate as the lion's rug. So as we look across the picture, we can see clearly this person is the leader. Legs open, head inclined. This figure is looking directly at us. Not like anybody else in the picture, just like the leader painting. No one else is looking at you but the little Psyche. That is a great identification. Is he holding a harp? No, he's not. She's actually holding a fan. But the fan has the right angle, just like the harp. And then here we have the two figures, one of leader looking up and the maid looking down from above. So this is very clear that we have a depiction of leader and Venus in a picture or painting by Charles Antoine Coypel. if we move straight ahead to his great famous works that he did, and this is a revelation here. So Don Quixote, which was famous Spanish stories, Charles Antoine Coypel told the story of Don Quixote within his works and in tapestries, but they are all stories of Correggio works and the tragic events. Number 1 begins the story of Don Quixote. So he arrives on scene with some form of jousting spear, and I believe there's a few characters in here that relate to Correggio's allegory of virtue. Just look at the side-by-sides that we've come up with. So let's move on to number 2, which is this Don Quixote served by the girls of an inn. Now, this picture is of the leader and the swan. So to the left, this is leader, and quite clearly above we have the lady in the leader painting looking down. This figure here is I believe a gentleman looking down. This figure represents the leader looking up. We see looking at us, holding the plate, is the Psyche. We see this lady represents the leader with the swan. She's got her hand outstretched. Here we see the maid. We see the little figures to the left of the picture, these 2 little girls. Don Quixote is representing Louis, who did the mutilations. So this whole painting, which is also a tapestry, and we call this like Don Quixote number 2, is of Correggio's leader and the swan. I've moved quite fast and swiftly with this one, as you should all be quite proficient in seeing and understanding the identification. We move along to Don Quixote number 3, and wow, what an identification we have here. This, a painting that was certainly part of the Orléans collection, which is Correggio's Holy Night, and even the glowing light in the centre picture is an identification of this work, just the light in the middle. And let's look at the side-by-sides. Here, these are the figures, how I've allocated them. This is where I show you that this engraving, which is a tapestry, is of Correggio's Holy Night. And this centre figure here, right in the middle, this chap, he's representing Mary with the bright light in front of him glowing. Don Quixote number 4. Now, we see Don Quixote with his sights set ahead, and Don Quixote is representing the Venus. This figure on the left, just like the satire, we have that peculiar cheeky slanted eye face which represents the lion's rug. It's so clear. And then we have this figure, which was possibly the match of the Cupid. We've even got a forked tree. But this is the beginning of the story, which is showing identification and relationship with the Venus Satire Cupid picture. And this work by Charles Antoine Coypel here, Don Quixote number 6, of this gentleman laid out by the river, clearly of the leader and the swan. Again, we go through all the side-by-sides as we've done before. But this one we can see is after the leader and the swan, Correggio. This excites me greatly. This next one, Don Quixote number 7, this is also a famous tapestry and an engraving. Who can recognise the donkey with that plume on his headset and the sort of the mouth covering that looks so ever much like Correggio's donkey in the Muleteers by Correggio, which was in the Orléans collection. So here we can see the 2 figures. I relate them here as the 2 gentlemen in the mutilation by Correggio, but then also I feel that he's using the Venus satire Cupid in this as well. Here's the satire, here is the Venus, and here is Cupid. When they represent the lion's face, it's always a wide, cheeky looking face, okay? This figure on the left is the lion's face, that wide, chunky face. So this Don Quixote number 7 represents both the Venus satire Cupid and the muleteers, both paintings that were part of the Orléans collection. Don Quixote number 8, I believe this represents the Danae painting and the Venus satire Cupid. And it's now beginning to maybe tell the story of the mutilations. So here we have a lady with her hand up as Cupid has his hand up, and Cupid has a torch. She's holding the torch, which is painted very similar to the torch that Cupid has. We have the person in the middle with the sword has his head inclined and is in the same mood and look as Danae. And behind, like the satire is outstretched, we have a figure holding behind. This figure on the floor is the Venus attacked. To the left, we've got some other figures which I believe could quite possibly show the Danae painting. Let's not forget the cheeky little lion's rug face here, a wide face. And this is an obscure storytelling, but I believe it's there. Now here again, on Don Quixote number 9, lots of things going on. In the centre of the work, Don Quixote is representing Ganymede. With his hand reaching up, just like Ganymede, we can see there is a dog below, just as the Ganymede. And if you look at the dog in the Ganymede, to the left of it is a tree, just like this one. This figure on the left, he looks very much in position and look of Io. Quite clearly above, we have the clouds and the tones of Zeus coming through the cloud. Then a painting that is now in the Louvre, and this is the allegory of virtue, a very famous Correggio mythological work, and not in the Orléans collection, was part of King Louis's collection, but Coypel would have been aware of this painting at that time, very much a big influence to his work. And if you look at the side by sides with this Don Quixote, and you can see that this is 100% nod, most certain, to Correggio's allegory of virtue. And that brown lady, I love her, and she's gorgeous, she's so beautiful. I love her face. I believe she's the main character of that picture. And here, I believe this is who Coypel is using to represent in his picture, this figure, with her hand outstretched. So now, Don Quixote's number 11. This is where I may captivate you and bring you back, because you might have got lost on a lot of this and think, well, what the hell is going on, Daniel? You're a crackpot. So here we go. This is the perfect version. This composition is certainly after the Venus satire Cupid that was in the Orléans collection. And we can see that it's also telling the story of an attack. So we've got our painting and an attack unfolding. Now this is where it gets really exciting. Please, I really hope you can see what I'm seeing in this picture. Don Quixote is coming to do the mutilations, but he is the figure of the satire, okay? This figure on the floor is the Venus, about to be attacked. This figure on the right is the Cupid. This figure on the left is the face of the rug, the lion's face. If you look at the centre figure with the sword, Don Quixote, he has both eyes on show, but an incline, just like the satire's face. The Venus, like this figure laying down, you can just barely make out the second eye, but you can see the nose. This is very much like Venus's face. Now this figure on the right is the Cupid. It's a side profile, just like Cupid's face. One hand up in the air. And then on the top right, we've got the fork. This next work, Coypel's jumped across and used, which was a famous pair of Correggio works of the time, now known as a work after the Carracci. This large scene of various heads, I believe, is to do with these paintings because they're all linked to the Orleans works. Don Quixote, number 14. Here we can see all the characters of the Leader and the Swan. Where we see these influences of Correggio's works in these Don Quixote works, you start to see more of certain characters in these works holding swords or knives or an attack. And here we can see this is the depiction of Leader and an attack about to happen. So I believe this is a great influence in the attack of the Leader painting. And this is a funny one actually, Don Quixote number 15, because there's many heads and figures in the centre and Don Quixote is attacking all these figures. And I personally believe this is some form of representation of the works of the Orleans collection being attacked. There's all different people here that we can look at and say they marry up with certain works. But I get the sense that this particular engraving and tapestry has got a greater message in there, which is to do with the attack of the works. We've got Don Quixote number 16. I believe is linked to Venus, Satyr, Cupid. We've got this figure on the right that has arrows in her back and she could represent the Cupid. We could have this lady here, she represents Venus. This little chap next, which represents the lion's rug. And then the chap here on the left, he could be representing the Satyr, but there's a 4-person composition, just like the Venus, Satyr, Cupid. Number 17, clearly of the Leader and the Swan. Again, we go through all the side-by-sides as we've done before. Don Quixote is representing the Leader. We see, looking at us, is the Psyche. We see this lady represents the Leader with the Swan. She's got her hand outstretched. This lady looking up represents the Leader looking up. We see the Maid. And quite clearly above, we have the lady in the Leader painting looking down. And then we see the little figures to the left of the picture. So these two figures here in the Coypel picture. Now, number 18, lots of things going on. This figure on the left, this is Ganymede. With his hand reaching up, just like Ganymede, we can see there is a dog below, just as the Ganymede. And if you look at the dog in the Ganymede, to the left of it is a tree that is forked, just like this one. And there's many other areas that match up with Orleans' works. I haven't conclusively worked them all out yet. So this work, part of the Don Quixote series, we've labelled it number 19. And this one by Correggio, I believe the allegory of vice, is depicted within this work. And if we look through all the little figures and side-by-sides, you can see that it's most certainly after a Correggio work. So there are gaps in the series so far where we think that's quite hard to allocate, but we are finding certain works that are 100% certainly from these works. So we've unlocked the mystery, we've unlocked the key, we know what was happening here. There is a truth in that these works are after the Correggio works and include the tragic events of the mutilations. You've got to go through the whole spectrum and history and timeline to see the great picture of what's at play here. So keep bearing with me and try not to get lost. So number 20, we now see some event taking place on a horse, a blindfolded Don Quixote. I believe this work was influenced and used from Correggio's Danae. Just look at the side-by-sides that we've come up with. Don Quixote is representing this side profile look of Danae. On the left of the painting, we have the Psyche and the little cherub holding his arrow. Now again, on Don Quixote number 21, we can see our Correggio muleteer's donkey. Here he is again in the picture. We could say that maybe these two chaps here are the muleteers. This is Don Quixote number 26. On the left of the picture, the allegory of virtue, and on the right, Correggio's allegory of vice. And in the centre, the leader and a swan and the Danae. Now look at all these side-by-sides. This is Coypel's way of showing his favourite works. And as we look on all of these various figures throughout, and leader and a swan especially, the lady very much reminds me of the leader. And now this allegory of virtue by Correggio, now look at these side-by-sides, they are something else. Same as allegory of vice, that cheeky little chap in the front. Like if you look at the satire in the middle and the way his face is looking, and this figure that Coypel's used, like, you know, even this guy with the flute and this lady in Correggio's with the flute, it's all there. So then we go on to Don Quixote's number 27, and this one is very special because it shows the Venus Satyr Cupid, the leader and a swan, the Danae, and the Io. And these are the 4 Correggio works that got mutilated. So the figures in the Correggio works that were cut have become fixtures within this Antoine Coypel work. And the figures that survived are the figures in the painting. Let me show you what I mean by that. With the Venus Satyr Cupid, we can see here that this bust represents the satire on the left. Then to the right, we have the Venus. And she is a sculpture also, just below the painting. The painting may even represent the scenery of the Venus satire painting. And then, because that has a fork tree in it also. But this figure below Venus, as in the famous Correggio work, represents the Cupid. But this figure is actually a person because this is a survivor. Whereas these other characters have become fixtures within the painting. Now we do the same with Leader and the Swan. In the centre of the work we see this bust, which I believe is of Leda, as her face was cut. So she's now become a fixture. Now, if you look through all these other figures within the work, you can see that these are all allocated to the other figures within the leader work. So where is the Danae? The bust, I would say, represents the Danae, and then below the bust we have the side profile face here, which is, I would say, represents the Psyche, and that didn't get no mutilation because you can see it is a character in the painting, but the bust shows us and may tell us that Danae's head was what was cut. Now we have the Io painting, which is really interesting because in the right of the painting, we have here in the picture a load of clouds and like a tree. And in the right of the Coypel picture, that could be representative of the Io. And if you look at the chap below the painting on the right, there is a man below with his hand looking side on, just like Io does. So I feel that this whole painting represents the attacked Io, the attacked Danae, the attacked Leda, and the attacked Venus Satyr Cupid. And Don Quixote's works finish up with this number 28. I think the translation of this is something to do with the madness of Don Quixote and what he'd done. But if you look at the 4 figures within this work, to me, they have similar representations to the 4 mutilated works. So as I've shown you in the previous Coypel work, that he's showing acknowledgements to these 4 Correggio works, I feel that this final depiction is of these four great figures, the Danai, the leader, the Io and the Venus. And they were the four figures that got attacked. This final work shows the summary of what's happened. I firmly believe that this is what this whole picture is showing. We now arrive with Hogarth, William Hogarth, and his most famous works, which was The Marriage a la Mode, a set of 6 works which Hogarth did, and they're in the National Gallery, and they are incredible. I firmly believe tells the story of the tragic events of the Orléans collection and the Correggio works. That's most certainly what is going on in that set of paintings, and that has never been discovered or known, wrote about or published ever before. But as I tell you all about that, I want to park that right here just for 1 second, and I want to jump to another painting. This is a really special painting. It's unbelievable. I discovered this work I'm about to show you called The Taste in High Life by Hogarth. I discovered this work as I was doing this essay and explaining about the a la mode, and this work had come to auction just at the time as I was writing this essay, and I'm looking at it in Sotheby's thinking, I cannot believe what I'm seeing here. And it sold for £2.5 million, and Sotheby's don't know, the Hogarth specialists don't know, and I bet you the buyers certainly don't know. Nobody knows actually in the background what I can see here, and this is very special, right? We can see my painting. So here we can see Tasting the High Life by William Hogarth, 1742. We can see this chap and this lady are very much influenced by a Coypel work, but what is going on in this painting in the background? Now I see it and I thought, I was in shock, is what I was. What you have here in the background is a Cupid in the furthest part of the background, which represents the Cupid of the School of Love. And then right at the front here, this is my Cupid. This is Correggio's Venus Satire Cupid. So I'm thinking, what is going on? The Cupid in the background has a person next to him, just like the Mercury, and to the right has the School of Love's Venus. Yes, she's got her back to us, but we can tell she's a Venus, and as in the School of Love, she has a bum on show to the rear. We can't see it in that work, but if you look, she's got one arm up just like the Venus has, but her front area is covered just like the School of Love, the variant version that Charles V had. So what we've got is Correggio's School of Love, 3 figures, and then here we have my Cupid. So where is my Venus? The School of Love Venus has a dress representing a Venus. Now here is a big dress, but she's on fire. So we just have a lone Cupid here, fanning the fires. So slightly above, we have the satire here, hidden in the cloud of smoke. You can see, these are the 2 Cupids that Correggio painted. And here is sadly a Venus on fire, because this was a really tragic event, just unimaginable. It's like now we have the Mona Lisa's very famous, and somebody went in and cut her up and chucked her on the fire. Whereas my painting was far more greater in fame than the Mona Lisa was, and that tragic event, what happened to my Venus, has been depicted here by Hogarth. Within the work, we have these people are representing the characters of both paintings. And if you look at this lady in the middle, she has a shell above her. The shell is usually a good identification of a Venus. And the other lady on the left, above her in the frame, is another shell. So both these females are representing both the Venuses. This central lady, she represents a Venus. To the right of her, this guy is the Mercury, and below is the Cupid, is the monkey, because he's holding the sheet, side profile, like Cupid is reading the book. And on the left, we have here the Venus and a Cupid. The little boy represents the Cupid, the lady is a Venus. And where the satire is, maybe it's just this fellow just behind her with his arm outstretched to the right. But within the painting, we have the two Correggio Cupids. My Cupid taming the fire of his Venus, very sad, and the other Cupid in the background of the School of Love, which survived. Incredible, really incredible. So let's return. And it's been wrote how he was deeply upset that people thought that he drew and painted caricatures, and this was an example of a point that he was making, that in fact, no, I do not do caricatures, I do characters. And he shows how, for example, this Raphael picture in the bottom left becomes a character within his work. Now, it's so obvious that he's showing you a key. Now, the key is that this is a Raphael's picture, that he has completely transferred this guy into a character within his work. Now, if you look at them side by side, you would say, well, maybe, I'm not sure, but he's showing you that this is how he's transferred this person into this person. And that's how they are not copies. They're just, he's created a character influenced by a painting. And this is a key to the a la mode. So in the a la mode, we have 6 works, and they are the depictions of the Orléans Correggio collection and the mutilations that happened within that collection. He has painted it within this a la mode works. The narrative is the Duke of Orléans dynasty. The characters are based from the Orléans dynasty. The characters are played by figures from the Correggio paintings that were within the Orléans collection. The story combines fiction, the affairs of the Orléans, the death of the best paintings in history. So we start off with plate number 1. You can see this large picture, Marriage a la mode, with lots of things going on. And this includes various works from the Orléans collection. It includes the Duke of Orléans. It includes influences from the Io painting, the Ganymede, and the Venus Satyr Cupid. So let's start, shall we? In the bottom left of the picture, we've got this old chap, which I believe represents Louis, who did the mutilations. In the background, you can see a building under construction. Now, Louis, in his later life, funded and built the College of the Orleans, which is now later been destroyed and gone, but he's a charitable man, being a Freemason. If we look closely at this little area of the picture, we can see that the chap holding the document leaning down, I believe represents Ganymede. I believe Louis in the chair, being naughty himself, if you look, he's in a big wide winged back chair. Look at his side profile face with his sort of beaked nose. I believe he represents the eagle of Jupiter himself, and he's got gout. So if, you know, that's his indulgence of having gout, shows his self-indulgence, and the eagle himself is coming down being indulgent. And I see him representative of the eagle. This chap over here is Ganymede. But then, where is the dog looking up? Well, just right here in the middle, there's a chap with his back to us looking up. So if we've got Ganymede, the boy, and we've got the eagle, and we've got the dog, surely to the left should be the tree. And here we have that long stick, but also there is a family tree there. So that area represents the Ganymede. Now if we move to the right, we can see the familiar look, which is the satyr looking across. Then we have a Venus. This the lady that's been married off, she represents a Venus. And this side profile here, look, is very much representative of Cupid. The chap on the right that's getting married off, he looks very much in position and look of Io, and the reflection in the mirror could be the depiction of Jupiter. But in the Io picture, you have that large pot, and just by his leg and under the table is a large pot. There is a painting of Louis as a young boy, and if you look at this painting, I believe this is where he used his influence to create this depiction of this character in this work, which is representative of Louis Philippe. Because if you look at his shoes, if you look at his clothes, and if you look at the dogs, they've even got that little chain on there. And then in the background, we can see paintings that are all representative of works that are in the Orléans collection. So we're going to plate 2, and this work is showing the Venus Satyr Cupid. It's showing another Orléans work, which is this Titian work. It's showing a lost work, which is this Concert of Cats. It's also showing the multiple heads, which was once known as Correggio work. But this collection of heads have all been placed within this work. And if you look at the allocation that I've done for all the figures, you'll see the familiarness of all of these works. The Venus here, she has a hand over her head, the protruding nose, that is certainly after Correggio's Venus. So here is the satire with both eyes shown, certainly after our variant satire. We can see the Cupid, his right foot is pushing forward and his left foot is slightly back and inclined, just like little Cupid. We've got the dog representing the lion. The cat one is brilliant. Everyone's like, why is there a cat in that picture? Well, it's this cat, and this cat was one of the Orléans paintings, and you even can see the music notes and the violin. You can see Titian's hidden painting in the background, covered. We see a scabbard that becomes present within the picture, laid out on the floor. So plate 3, I believe, shows the Danaï painting, because here you can see the centre figure inside looking just like Danaï, and we have the little Psyche matching this fellow over here, and he is in a side profile. We've got matches with both our cherubs. This guy holding a stick is just like the little cherub holding his arrow. We have a window in the background, like the Danaï. And so strangely enough, where is the gold shower or the golden cloud? I don't know what on earth Hogarth is thinking here, but he's put this large bald figure in the middle, this large head. And this large head is of gold colour, just like the gold cloud. You know, the gold cloud is raining down gold to impregnate the Danaï. This guy he looks like he's trying to shoot something from his mouth. We can see that this is allocated to the Danaï. There's too much that make it true. The little nod to the cutting of this Danaï painting is hidden right there in the Danaï's hand. She's holding the knife. And if you look here through engravings, you can see little nods to other Orléans paintings. Mythical beasts, memento mori. It's all the allocation to the Orléans collection. So we're on plate number 4. Now, when it comes to William Hogarth's a la mode and discovering the connection with Correggio's works, it was plate number 4 that did this for me, because I was once in the National Gallery walking along with no awareness of Hogarth at all. And the corner of my eye, I walk past these 6 works and I see the IO there. And I was like, that's Correggio's IO. And I studied it all, and it's very much known that this is Correggio's IO within Hogarth's works. And I read a book and it said Hogarth never went to Vienna, and this is the Vienna Correggio IO. And then I thought, hold on a minute, this is not the Vienna IO that I've studied. This is the Orléans IO that was cut. This is not the Vienna version. I can see the proportion, I can see the details. Why are they saying this? Because they're not experts in Correggio. So no expert in Correggio has realised which IO that is, but this got me thinking. And then bang, hold on a minute, this is satire. This is satire Venus and Cupid in the painting. right in the middle of the picture. Here we have, look at the side by side of the satire. She is the Venus. She's got the dummy there, which means she's a mother. And then we've got Venus and Satire. This little boy down here, he could be the Cupid. And what other Orleans works are within this scene? So here, look, the Noli Tangier. Io, Noli Tangier, the Venus and Satire. So is the School of Love in here as well? So I'm thinking, hold on a minute. This dark-skinned fella here is just like Mercury. So where's Cupid? There's our Cupid. So above must be Venus. So I'm looking above in the picture, and looking down proudly is this man in this portrait. It's just like the Venus. So I believe this section here is the School of Love, Venus, Cupid and Mercury. Down below in these little tiny little figures on the floor, there's our donkey, muleteers, with our two gentlemen. So these are the muleteers and this is the mule. So we're getting all the Correggio works in this scene. Who else are these people? We have the Holy Knight. That face there just looks like the Mary. This person holding his tea is this figure in the Holy Knight with hands up. This man with a pipe, maybe the guy holding the stick. And this other figure here, the hands are doing similar movements. So we've got quite a few figures that all match up with Correggio works here. Now it's getting traumatic. We're on plate 5. Now look at this chap. That is leader in the middle. Look how the broad forehead and the position of the body and the slant of the head. This is leader. But look, he's been attacked, just like leader was attacked. And if you look through the picture, looking at us, that little Psyche, she's holding a squirrel, he's holding his harp. There are as many parts within this work that match up with the leader painting. And there's many other areas that match up with Orleans' works. Plate number 6. They finish with great clarity, these Alamo plates, in showing our hidden Correggio works. And this last work, let's get straight to our Venus. And there she is. She dies in this last scene as our Venus was destroyed in the Orleans collection. And here she's dying in its exact facial expression as our Venus. Here is our Cupid. And here is our Satire. And that wide face, just like the lion, is over here on the right. Plate number 6 represents the greatest painting in history that was in the Orleans collection, that was destroyed, that my Cupid we have saved, and we have part of that painting. Now we leave the Alamode, and this engraving we now land on, titled Cruelty Imperfection. Wow, does this show us the destruction of our works. If you look here, this lady, mutilated, head cut, hand cut, destroyed, dead on the floor, is the Venus. Above is our Satire holding the lamp. To the left, this chap is our Cupid. But where would our forked tree be above the Cupid as our Venus Satire Cupid? Look, we have a fork. He's put an actual pitchfork where the fork should be. So we have Cupid, we have the fork, we have the Venus, and we have the Satire. So who is the other part of this work? Again, it's leader. This bald-headed figure is the leader. All the other people are the figures from the leader painting. Look at the side-by-sides. Here they are. And as we go through them, we even see where the swan is flying off, we have an owl. So the Venus and the leader, so famous, and their destruction was recorded by Hogarth. So this Hudibras and the lawyer, no one else will see it until now that you know the code. But look at this dog. It's exactly representative of the dog in Coypel's hidden work. Look at this dog, it's a match. The centre figure has a shell above. The shell identifies the Venus. To the left is the satire. To the right is the Cupid. Where is the forked tree? Maybe it's this little knocked over book, this book in the forked position. And we have the dog, which represents the lion. Now this work by Hogarth is continuing the story what Coypel did. And Coypel was showing the tragedy, but he was using the system that Rembrandt did. We can keep looking through these works. The sleeping congregation is actually a sleeping Venus. Here is the Cupid, this guy is the satire, and here's our funny little face which represents the lion. It's always been a great or known thing that Hogarth was greatly knowledgeable of Correggio, but why and how? And why he was so knowledgeable? Because he knew about the Orléans collection, he knew about the Orléans works, and he knew about the mutilations. And it was his duty to record this story of what happened. Now, what these artists have done, what Rembrandt did, what Coypel did, what Hogarth did. Now, me telling this great story is no different to what they have done, but I have done it overall. What I am doing here with you in these chapters is what Hogarth has done. It comes from Antonio Allegri de Correggio. His works were not to be forgotten. I believe this little Cupid sitting here is my Cupid. Hogarth is fully aware that Cupid was saved. Coypel was aware that the Cupid was saved. Hogarth shows that he knows the Cupid survived. So the awareness has been there in previous history that my Cupid by Correggio survived. And in this picture with Cupid sitting here alone, with many Masonic references all over the picture, which we won't go into, maybe you can spot them yourself. I believe that is my little Cupid sitting there alone. Now what we can see is that Correggio's works were so important to these master painters. It was very important for the history of the tragedies to be recorded. We finished now with Hogarth, but it didn't end there, and it wasn't forgotten just then. All the great artists after this, Turner, Reynolds, they did the same. They represented Correggio's works in their works. It's either a deep secret art society or Freemasonry thing, but Correggio's works were never to be forgotten, and they were used throughout history. The Freemasons are not letting the story of these works be forgotten. I'm sure the Freemasons are becoming aware of what I've discovered and are watching this. I'll leave this now, so thank you for watching these 4 chapters of this documentary explaining the importance of my work, the story of my work. We're going to take a breather for the moment and just gather some thoughts of what's happened here, and we'll come to a conclusion